At 2 a.m., she begged to stay one more night, but his mother said something that changed everything. The rain poured hard from the sky as Elena Carter stood outside the big house. She was shaking, soaked from head to toe, with her duffel bag clutched tightly in her arms. Her clothes were wet and stuck to her skin, and her lips were trembling. It wasn't just from the cold, it was from heartbreak. The porch light flicked on. The door opened slowly, and there stood Vivian Blake, elegant as always. Her silk robe looked untouched by time or worry, and her pearl earrings caught the light, but her eyes held no warmth. "Please," Eleanor whispered, her voice cracking. "Just one more night. I don't have anywhere else to go." Vivian looked her up and down like she was a stain on the doorstep. Her voice was sharp, not loud, but it cut deeper than shouting ever could. "You remind me of the girl who nearly destroyed my son once," she said. "I won't let it happen again." Behind her, Jason stood in the hallway. The man Eleanor was engaged to, the man she had loved and trusted. His face was blank, his arms were crossed. He didn't say a word, he didn't move. Elena's eyes met his. Her heart begged him to speak, to stop this, to take her side, but he just stood there. Vivian took a step forward and placed her hand on the door. "You should leave now," she said softly, like she was doing Eleanor a favor. And then the door slowly closed in her face. Eleanor stood there for a moment, frozen. The rain dripped down her forehead and into her eyes. Her hands tightened around the bag. Her whole body felt heavy, like it wasn't just water weighing her down, but something deeper, a kind of pain that didn't have a name. As the last bit of light disappeared through the closing door, Eleanor whispered to the empty air, "I thought you were my home." And then, in the dark, she turned away, one slow step at a time. The street was silent, except for the rain. The house behind her, once filled with hope and promises, was now just another door that had been slammed shut. From ICU shifts to dinner parties she never belonged in, Elena Carter's life had always been about surviving, not shining. She grew up in a small 2-bedroom flat on the edge of town, spending her teenage years taking care of her sick father. He had kidney failure, and most nights she would help him with his medicine, cook simple meals, and sit by his side just to make sure he made it through the night. Her mother had left when Elena was just 8, and after that, it was just her dad, and her little brother, Leo. When her father passed away suddenly one night, Elena was only 19. She didn't have time to grieve. There were bills to pay, and Leo was just a boy. She put her dreams on hold, skipped university, and enrolled in a fast-track nursing program. Within a year, she was working full-time night shifts at the local hospital. Her days were a blur of broken sleep, long bus rides, and caring for patients who reminded her too much of the father she'd lost. Then, one rainy night at the hospital, everything changed. Jason Blake came into the ER with a dislocated shoulder and a nasty cut on his forehead after a bike accident. He was tall, smooth-talking, and obviously rich, the kind of man who usually never looked Elena's way, but he did. He smiled through the pain and asked for her name. He came back 3 days later, not for a checkup, but to bring her coffee, then flowers, then dinner. For 6 months he pursued her like she was the most valuable thing in the world. He made her feel seen, special, like someone finally wanted to take care of her for once. He told her to move in with him, promised he'd help with Leo's school fees, told her she deserved a break from all the weight she was carrying. And Eleanor, who hadn't been loved properly in years, said yes. At first, everything felt like a dream. His apartment was beautiful, full of art and books and warmth. Jason liked to cook, play the piano, and make Elena laugh until her cheeks hurt. He said he wanted to build a life with her, that their future was going to be full of light. But the moment she met Vivian Blake, the dream began to crack. Vivian was nothing like Jason. She was cold, sharp, and powerful, the kind of woman whose presence made everyone else shrink. She was a well-known CEO, respected in business circles, and always in control. The first time Elena shook her hand, Vivian didn't even smile. "A nurse," she said to Jason later, not knowing Elena had overheard. "That's who you bring home? Really?" Jason brushed it off. "She just needs time," he told Elena. "Be patient. She'll come around." So Elena tried. She laughed at Vivian's dry jokes, brought wine to family dinners, and stayed quiet when Vivian forgot to invite her to wedding planning meetings. But Vivian didn't forget. She deleted Elena's messages to the family group chat. She made decisions without her, about the venue, the dress code, even the menu. When Elena asked about it, Vivian would smile and say, "Oh, it just slipped my mind, dear. You're so busy with those long hospital shifts." And Jason, he told Elena not to take it personally. It's just how she is. You know how she gets with control. Don't give her a reason to push you away. So Elena stayed quiet. She even postponed her RN specialization program to make time for wedding planning, time she was never really included in. She gave up her small apartment, her old friends, even her late-night talks with Leo, all to become the woman Jason said he wanted her to be, a woman who could fit into his world. But no matter how many fancy dinners she attended, how many designer dresses she wore, or how many times she smiled through the hurt, Elena always felt like a stranger sitting in someone else's seat. Every dinner with Vivian felt like walking into a test she hadn't studied for. Every glance felt like judgment. Every compliment came with a warning. "You clean up nicely," Vivian said once during a charity gala. Not everyone can make a cheap dress look that decent. Jason had laughed it off, kissed her cheek, and called her beautiful. But the damage was done. Slowly, the shine in Elena's eyes began to fade. The woman who once held dying patients' hands with steady strength began to doubt herself. She began to wonder if love meant losing who you were just to keep someone close. She still remembered the way Jason had once looked at her, like she was everything he needed. But lately, he only looked tired, annoyed when she brought up Leo's tuition, dismissive when she asked why he hadn't paid it yet. "Elena," he said one night, "you're always so emotional. Can't you just trust that I'm handling it?" But nothing was being handled. Not Leo's school, not the wedding, not her heart. And the more Elena gave, the more it felt like she was being erased. She had traded the hospital's harsh lights for chandeliers and champagne glasses, but she missed the simplicity of honesty. At least in the ICU, people didn't pretend. Now, in this house, with Jason's silent stares and Vivian's cruel smiles, Elena didn't know where she belonged anymore. She wasn't a guest. She wasn't family. She wasn't even herself. She was just someone who reminded them of something else, something they never talked about, something that still lived in the corners of their eyes. And soon, Eleanor would find out exactly what that was. It was a quiet afternoon. Rain tapped against the wide glass windows, the kind of slow, steady rain that makes everything feel softer. Elena was in Jason's study, looking for a receipt he'd asked her to find. The room smelled like leather and old books, tidy, serious, like the kind of space where nothing ever changed. She pulled open a drawer in his desk and shuffled through a stack of documents. That's when her fingers touched the edge of something hard and cool, a picture frame. Curious, she slid it out. It was a family photo. Jason was in the middle, smiling. Younger, a bit leaner, but still him. Vivian stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder. And then, on the other side, was a woman. Elena's breath caught in her throat. The woman looked just like her. Same eyes, same dark waves of hair, same quiet smile, same way of tilting her head slightly when the camera was on her. For a second, Elena thought maybe it was a trick of the light. Maybe her eyes were tired. But then she looked at the back of the frame. One word written in neat, slanted handwriting. Maya. Her fingers went cold. She stared at the name, then looked back at the picture. It wasn't her. It was someone else. Someone who looked just like her. Someone named Maya. The hallway outside the study felt too still as she walked out with the frame in her hand. Jason was in the kitchen, cutting vegetables for dinner. "Jason," she said, holding up the photo. "Who is this?" He didn't look up right away. His hands stilled on the cutting board. Then, slowly, he turned. His face changed. "Where did you find that?" he asked. "In your drawer," she said. "Who is she?" He wiped his hands on a towel, then reached for the photo. "That's Maya, my ex-fiancée." Eleanor's heart thudded. "She looks like me," she whispered. Jason sighed, running a hand through his hair. "She died 2 years ago. Car crash. It was hard. For me. For my mum." Elena nodded slowly. "Why didn't you tell me about her?" "I didn't think I had to," he said quickly. "You're nothing like her." But his tone was sharp, defensive, like a door being slammed shut. "I didn't ask if I was like her," Eleanor said quietly. "I asked why you didn't tell me." Jason looked away. "Because I knew what you'd think." "And what should I think?" Eleanor asked, voice soft but trembling. That I was just a replacement? He scoffed. Don't be ridiculous. You're imagining things. But her stomach had already dropped. That night she couldn't sleep. She kept seeing that photo, that face, the way Vivian had always looked at her, the strange feeling she'd had since the beginning, like she was stepping into a role already written for her. The next morning, while Jason was out at the gym, Elena walked into Vivian's study. She'd never snooped before, but something in her gut told her the truth was close, too close to ignore. The room smelled like expensive perfume and fresh-cut roses. She opened a drawer near the desk. Nothing. Another one. More files, papers. Then she found a stack of letters bound with a faded red ribbon. She sat down, heart thudding. The top envelope was addressed to Maya. The date? 3 months ago. Elena blinked. That couldn't be right. Maya was gone. 2 years ago. She opened the first letter with shaking hands. My sweet girl, it began. I still see you in every corner of this house. Your laughter echoes through the halls. I still buy lilies on Sundays, even though you're not here to arrange them. Tears welled in Elena's eyes. She flipped through another and another. Every letter was written to Maya, all after her death. Vivian had been writing to her for months. And then, at the bottom of the drawer, was a small notebook. Vivian's handwriting. The last page read, Elena is quiet, obedient. She's not Maya, but she fits. If I close my eyes, sometimes I can almost hear Maya again. I'll never get her back, but maybe I can build around the ghost. Elena couldn't breathe. She wasn't chosen because of her heart, or her kindness, or her loyalty. She was chosen because she looked like her. She closed the drawer and stood still for a long time. Her reflection in the study mirror stared back at her, and for the first time, she didn't recognize herself. Later that day, she asked Vivian directly. They sat across from each other in the grand white marble sitting room, the kind of place where no real conversation ever happened, but this one would. I found the letters, Elena said. Vivian didn't flinch. You knew, Elena continued. You saw me, and you saw Maya, and that's why you let me stay. Vivian looked her in the eye, calm and unbothered. You were just easy to mold into what we miss, she said, her voice like ice. Eleanor felt the words settle like dust on her skin, heavy, final. She had walked into their lives thinking she was building a future, but all along, she'd been building someone else's past. Elena stood in front of the mirror, scissors in her hand. Her fingers trembled slightly as she stared at her reflection. The soft waves of her hair, the familiar face, the face that wasn't truly hers anymore. It was hers, yes, but also Maya's. Every time she looked into Jason's eyes now, she couldn't tell if he was looking at her or someone else's memory. With one sharp cut, a thick lock of hair fell to the floor. She kept cutting, uneven pieces, messy lines, until her shoulders were bare and her face looked harder, unfamiliar. Then she walked to the closet and began pulling out dresses, soft pastels, floral prints, blouses Vivian had picked for her, shoes Vivian had suggested. Elena stuffed them into a bag, one by one. She changed into jeans and a plain black t-shirt. No makeup, no earrings, no smile. Jason noticed the change that evening. What happened to your hair? He asked, eyes narrowing. I wanted something different, she said flatly. He frowned. It's too short. You don't look like yourself. Maybe I don't want to, she replied, walking past him. That's when things started to shift. Jason became distant, then overbearing, then cruel in ways that sounded sweet to anyone else's ears. You've been really emotional lately, he'd say. Maybe it's all in your head. You always make things bigger than they are, Elena. Why do you create problems when everything's fine? I chose you. Isn't that enough? Stop comparing yourself to a dead woman. But she wasn't the one comparing. They were, in silence, in shadows, in glances, in the way Vivian used the same nickname she used for Maya, in the way Jason sometimes called her May Dash before stopping himself. One night, Eleanor checked her brother Leo's school portal. He'd just texted her, asking why his tuition hadn't cleared. She felt confused. Jason had promised to handle it weeks ago. She logged in. Balance overdue, 620,000 naira. Her heart dropped. She opened the bank records. The tuition Jason had promised to pay, never sent. She waited for him to return from his business dinner. She didn't even let him take off his coat. You lied, she said, holding up her phone. Leo's tuition. You never paid it. Jason blinked, then shrugged off his jacket slowly. We had to reprioritize, he said, casually, pouring himself a drink. We? Elena's voice cracked. That's my brother. He has no one else. We're planning a wedding, Elena. You think school fees come before a guest list of 500? She stared at him. You promised. I also promised not to have to deal with guilt trips every week, he snapped. He's your responsibility, not mine. She couldn't speak. Her throat felt tight, her chest hollow. Every time she thought she'd reached the bottom, the ground cracked again beneath her. That night, sleep didn't come. She found herself scrolling through Maya's old blog, the few surviving posts still cached online. Then she found something else, an audio clip. She hesitated, thumb hovering over the play button, then tapped. Maya's voice filled the room, soft, trembling. Vivian says I'm not ready, that I'm ruining Jason's future, that I should step back. But I love him, and I thought he loved me. She keeps saying I'm selfish, like being myself is a threat to their family. The clip ended. Elena froze. It was the same pressure, the same manipulation, the same quiet destruction. The next morning, Vivian summoned her. They sat in the rose garden. Vivian poured tea like they were at some British estate, as if Elena's world wasn't crumbling piece by piece. I heard you're upset about the tuition, Vivian said calmly. That's unfortunate. Elena didn't respond. Vivian smiled gently. I understand what you're going through, all that confusion, that anger. But there are bigger things at stake. Like pretending I'm someone else, Elena said, her voice low. Vivian's smile faded. Let me be clear, she said, setting down her cup. You can stay, play the part, walk down the aisle, keep Jason happy, be what he needs, what we all need. Which is what? Maya? Elena asked. The idea of Maya. You were never her, but you were close enough to build around. Elena stood up. Her fingers were clenched so tight her nails dug into her palms. You're grieving a ghost, she whispered. But you're killing me. Vivian looked up, cold and untouched. Then leave. Walk away. But don't expect Jason to choose you over blood. He won't. He never did. And in that moment, Elena knew. She'd always been alone in this house, always playing a role someone else had written, a shadow of someone gone, a body to fill the silence. But she wasn't a ghost. She was still alive, and maybe it was time to act like it. The house was dark when Jason walked in, past midnight. Elena was on the couch, sitting in silence, hands folded on her lap, the voice memo still in her pocket. Maya's voice, the one that now felt louder than her own. Jason didn't expect to see her awake. He flinched slightly when he turned on the light and saw her. You're back late, she said softly. He shrugged. Got held up. She stood up slowly, walked toward him, stopped just a few feet away. Her eyes scanned him, the slight flush in his cheeks, the undone collar, the soft scent that floated off his suit jacket. Her stomach turned. Is that... She choked on her words. Maya's perfume? He looked at her, expression blank, then looked away. It's probably just something from the car service, or someone I walked past. No, she whispered. I know it. It's the same one Vivian told me to start wearing when we got engaged. She used to say it was his favorite. I didn't understand then. Jason sighed and ran a hand through his hair. She stepped forward. Jason, please don't do this. Please. I gave up everything for you. My apartment, my work schedule, my brother's tuition. I stayed, even when I felt invisible. I begged your mother to give me a chance. I thought we were building something real. He didn't respond. Not a word. Not even an apology. Just silence. That told her everything. I was never enough, was I? She asked, voice cracking. You wanted someone who looked like Maya, and I did. I guess that was all it took. Before Jason could say anything, another voice cut through the stillness. Vivian. She was standing on the stairs, arms folded, lips tight, watching them like a queen watching the end of a bad play. This was never about you, Elena, she said, calm, sharp. You were the echo. She was the music. Elena's knees nearly buckled. Jason stood there, silent still, not denying it, not even trying. You let me believe I was part of this family, Elena whispered. You let me plan a wedding for a man who saw through me. You let me love someone who only wanted a memory. Vivian tilted her head slightly. It's not personal. You just weren't her. And some roles can't be recast. Jason still said nothing. He looked at the ground. Elena blinked back tears. Her hands were shaking. Then say it, she said, staring at him. Say it to my face, that you never loved me. that I was just a replacement. But Jason wouldn't meet her eyes. Vivian stepped down the last few stairs, moving past him. "You should leave now," she said coldly. "It's late. This conversation is over." And just like that, Elena felt her world collapse. No more pretending, no more trying. She went upstairs silently, packed what little she had left, a bag of folded clothes, her nursing shoes, a few books, a photo of Leo. She walked back down, duffel bag on her shoulder, passing Jason in the hallway. He still wouldn't look at her. At the front door, Vivian was waiting with an umbrella, but she didn't offer it. She just opened the door wide and stepped back. "Please," Elena said one last time, her voice raw. "Please don't do this. I have nowhere to go. Just one night. One more night." Vivian's reply was like ice. "You remind me too much of the girl who almost ruined my son's future. I won't let it happen again." Jason stayed in the hallway, a shadow in the background. The rain poured down outside, cold, heavy, and somehow familiar, like the night Maya had died. Elena looked at Jason one last time. "I thought you were my home," she whispered. He didn't answer. The door closed behind her. She stood on the front porch, soaked almost instantly, the strap of her bag cutting into her shoulder. Her feet refused to move. Part of her still hoped someone would open the door, say her name, say sorry, say anything, but all she heard was the storm and her own heartbeat. She pulled out her phone, scrolled to the saved voice memo, hit play. Maya's voice crackled in her ear. "I just wish someone would listen. I'm tired of being shaped into what they want. I'm tired of feeling like I don't belong in my own. If anything happens to me, please, don't let her do this to anyone else." Eleanor closed her eyes, let the rain wash down her face. Her hands tightened around the phone. She whispered into the night, "I won't. I promise." And then she walked, not just away from the house, but away from the girl who had bent herself into someone else's shape, away from the lies, the silence, the ghost she'd been forced to become. She didn't know what came next, but she knew it would be hers. Elena sat on the edge of her new bed, in a small but warm apartment she could finally call hers. Leo was in the next room, asleep with a comic book on his chest, and the desk lamp still on. The hum of peace, something she hadn't felt in so long, filled the space like a gentle hug. But peace hadn't come easily, and it hadn't come quietly. After that night, soaked, heartbroken, alone, Elena didn't just walk away. She didn't crawl into silence like they expected her to. She chose to rise. The voice memo from Maya had haunted her, but it also lit a fire in her. Maya had tried to speak. Elena would make sure the world heard her now. She released the recording anonymously. No names at first, just the truth. A voice memo labeled, "Please, don't let her do this to anyone else." Then the internet did the rest. Reddit, TikTok, Twitter, it spread like wildfire. The memo was raw, real, and chilling. It sounded like a goodbye from a woman broken by pressure, silence, and control. It didn't take long before the dots were connected. A young woman named Maya had died 2 years ago in a mysterious car accident just after ending her engagement with Jason Blake, son of one of the most powerful CEOs in the state, Vivian Blake. Soon, another headline broke. Exclusive. Whistleblower claims Maya was manipulated by Blake family. Then more came forward. A former assistant, a wedding planner, even a distant cousin, all confirming how Vivian ran everything and how Maya had felt trapped. Vivian tried to fight back, but the truth hit too fast, too loud. Her company's stock plummeted. Investors pulled out. Board members demanded answers. And then, lawsuits. Jason, once seen as the charming heir to a media empire, was reduced to silence. No press appearances, no wedding, no sympathy, just long-forgotten friends turning their backs one by one. But Elena didn't watch it all unfold with glee. She wasn't out for revenge. She just wanted truth, and she wanted Maya to finally rest. So she did something more important than revenge. She started the Maya Foundation, a quiet office above a coffee shop, funded by donations and volunteers, a safe space for women like Maya, and like herself, who had been emotionally worn down by power, wealth, or cold-hearted control. Women who had been told to stay quiet, be patient, or play the part. She gave them therapists, legal advice, and most importantly, community. The first day it opened, Elena stood beside a photo of Maya, not in sadness, but in honor. She wasn't weak, she told the small group of women gathered in the room. She was strong. She just didn't get the chance to fight back. But we will. We all will. As the foundation grew, so did Elena. She returned to nursing part-time, the job that made her feel useful, strong, and human again. Not someone's project, not a shadow of someone else, but Elena, a nurse, a sister, a builder of her own life. Her apartment was modest, 2 bedrooms, a couch that squeaked, a fridge with way too many post-it notes from Leo, but it was hers. No pearls, no ballrooms, no mansion halls filled with whispers and silence, just laughter, freedom, honesty. One night, Leo asked her, "Do you miss him?" She paused, then smiled gently. "I miss who I thought he was, but not who he turned out to be." Leo nodded and went back to drawing. "I'm glad you chose us instead." She did. She really did. And somewhere deep inside, she knew Maya would have done the same, if only she had been given the chance. So Elena didn't waste hers. She chose to live. And this time, the story was hers to write. The grass was still damp with morning dew as Elena knelt quietly at Maya's grave. The headstone was simple, just a name, a date, and flowers, fresh ones that someone had left earlier that week. She didn't know who. Maybe one of the others Maya had quietly touched. Maybe someone who had finally seen the truth. Elena reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was just a short letter, nothing fancy, but it held all the weight of the journey behind her. She laid it gently against the stone, pressing it down with a smooth pebble. "I think they tried to make me you," the letter said. "But now, I'm just me, and that's finally enough." She didn't cry, not this time. She just stood, quiet and full. A hand slipped into hers. Leo, in his worn hoodie and scuffed sneakers, looked up at her. "Ready?" he asked. Elena nodded. "Ready." They walked together, away from the cemetery, down the quiet road lined with trees just beginning to bloom. Spring was coming again, slowly, softly. Their apartment wasn't far. It wasn't big either, but it had what they needed. A kitchen that smelled like pancakes on Sundays, a shelf full of Leo's comics, a bed that didn't feel like waiting for someone else to come home, a space that didn't belong to a memory. It belonged to them. As they reached their front steps, Elena paused. The sky was glowing orange and pink, the sun lowering itself gently behind the rooftops. She looked out across the horizon and smiled to herself. "I begged to stay," she whispered, a beat. But what I didn't know was that walking away would be the beginning of everything.